Welcome everybody now. Welcome Dennis Savic. Dennis, how are you doing?
Doing all right. Doing all right. It's nice and early in Melbourne, but no, it's good to be here.
Cool. Dennis, I really appreciate your time. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And I have so many things to ask you about Savic Motorcycles in the C series. The bike is amazing.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man. It's been a lot of work to get to where we are, but we're very happy with where the bike's at, and we've got a very few very happy customers. So yeah, no, it's exciting.
I can imagine. And Dennis, I always like to start talking about the founders, about what they have done before they start the companies and so on. I know you are an engineer and I know that you have worked at Ford, but how did you get involved with motorcycles?
Um, like the earliest memory I have with anything to do remotely with bikes was like my dad's friend had a bike,
Mm-hmm.
and like when you're a young kid, you like run around everyone's house and
Yeah.
like you just do whatever you want. Yeah, I like went into one room and I just saw a box on the floor and I opened the box and there was a bike helmet and I just put it on and just
Mm-hmm.
thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then I wanted to build a bike myself, but like my old man, um, he never did any like work like that. Like he didn't
Mm-hmm.
really work on cars or bikes like when I was growing up. So it was kind of really weird for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
in my family, I was like the odd one out. But I just knew it's what I wanted to do. And when I decided to study engineering, my mum asked me why, and I said because I want to build an automotive business one day. And she was just like,
Amazing. That's
okay.
commitment, man. Wow.
That's it's super weird. Like it's definitely a blessing and a curse. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've had an objective for like 18 years
Mm-hmm.
now, and the blessing part of it is I've always had direction, and it's kept me out of trouble and required me to work really hard. But the curse part is, can't can't really do anything else maybe. So, it's just what I'm supposed to do and do my best. That's all.
Amazing. And Dennis, well, your final thesis in the university was a chassis for a electric motorcycle, right? What was that the
Yeah.
cornerstone for Savic Motorcycles?
You've done your homework. Uh, yes and no. It was definitely the first stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
But I chose to do that. So that wasn't a thesis that was
Mm-hmm.
available. I had to apply. I had to convince a supervisor to supervise my thesis.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked, someone who was supposedly a specialist in FEA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think I had like two meetings with the guy through my whole thesis. So I just like
Mm-hmm.
figured it out myself, or thought I had anyways. But um, it was a stepping stone and then got me really thinking about everything properly. But I read it now and it's just comical. Like it's terrible. Like it's just really
It's a
bad.
beginning.
It's
That was a
yeah, it's a
beginning.
start. It's a
Yeah.
start. It's yeah, if anybody finds it, do not believe a word that's in there. But yeah, it was a way for me to get credit
Mm-hmm.
for something I was really passionate about, and something I was really interested in. So it made sense.
I see. And could you give me an overview about Savage Motorcycles as a company today? For example, how many full-time employees does it have?
So we've got 9 full-time staff at the
Mm-hmm.
moment. We're looking to onboard a couple more in the near future. But we have like 20 or so people in
Mm-hmm.
various capacities as contractors or sweat equity in the business. So it's like we've got a very small full-time staff, but
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely a bit of a community of people chipping in where they can behind the scenes to help us, progress. Um, so yeah, that's the size of the team.
I see. So, Dennis, let's talk about the C series. Well, how ready for the market the bike is?
Well, the first couple of customer vehicles are built and in the factory, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
go to customers in the next couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
if nothing goes horribly wrong, like they're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
We've done all of our production tooling. We've done all of our road compliance for Australia. We've got
Mm-hmm.
our dealership licenses. Um, we've actually registered. Um, so the first bike we ever registered for the road was in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
start of 23, start of 23. And we decommissioned that bike because it was an old prototype.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, relatively recently, like in the last couple of months, we've registered our first two production vehicles, which are customer test vehicles, like company-owned vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, like basically we're just about to tick over that commercialization phase. And the next stage for us is very much focused on production and growth and, you know, getting that sausage machine turning over.
Cool. And then as well, the bike seems amazing. Can you go through some specifics about the bike? For example, in the powertrain, what can you tell me about the motor? I know that's AC motor named SM1. What can you tell me in technical terms?
Sure. So the platform, so the product's the C series. C
Mm-hmm.
stands for Cafe Racer. It's the style of bike that
Mm-hmm.
we have. The SM1 platform. So what this C series is built on is called the SM1 platform.
Mm-hmm.
And the platform consists of the battery pack, all the power electronics, the
Mm-hmm.
motor, the swing arm,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the rims.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else we can modify and tweak, or even provide new components to create an entirely different style of bike off the same engine, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, or same powertrain. Um, so that's our strategy. Um, in terms of specifications for the C series, we've got two variants, the Alpha and the Delta.
Mm-hmm.
The Alpha is the higher spec, higher priced
Mm-hmm.
variant, and then the Delta is lower spec and lower priced. But they aesthetically look the same.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the fundamental differences are the battery pack and the motor,
Mm-hmm.
really. So the Alpha will do 0 to 100 in 3.5 seconds. Possibly a little bit less.
I see.
Range of about 200 kilometers. Combined city and freeway. If you're just on the freeway, it's a bit less. If you're just in the city, it's a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
It weighs 280 odd kilos.
Mm-hmm.
And what else? Charge time from a 3.3 kilowatt capable charger is about 5 hours, 16.3 kilowatt hour battery pack.
Mm-hmm.
And from a standard wall plug here in Australia, they're 1.8 kilowatts.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brazil might be
Yeah,
similar.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're looking at 8 9 hours. So all of our customers that have ordered bikes, they expect to charge at home and leave it plugged in overnight and what have you. That's you know it's a fun commuter bike with
I
a
can
decent
imagine.
range.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And then it's throughout the time there were changes in the battery pack. For example, in the beginning, there are cylindrical cells, then pouch cells, and now prismatic cells. What was the reason for this change? Capacity, cooling, the battery pack design.
So when we first started, we were using like really hobbyist grade
Mm-hmm.
cylindrical cells.
Mm-hmm.
So they just weren't feasible. They had
Mm-hmm.
there's a thing called a voltage drop when you hit the throttle,
Mm-hmm.
um, and their voltage drop was terrible. Like it was to the point where it would go, you know, really like it would damage the batteries at how low the voltage would go under power. So that wasn't viable. And then we thought, okay, let's move to pouch cells because of the power density and
Mm-hmm.
what have you. Um, the reality was with pouch cells was that um, we didn't have we used quite large pouch cells.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to minimize the number of cells in the pack to decrease battery management complexity,
Mm-hmm.
and cost. And so we used quite large pouch cells. The supply we had at the time wasn't it wasn't a tier 1, 2, or even 3 supplier. It was quite a
Mm-hmm.
small supplier, and um, in order to have a pouch cell, you need to have like infrastructure around it that adds weight and size to kind of house it, keep the right
Mm-hmm.
pressures, um, and the connectors are finicky. You've got to have specific manufacturing processes to actually laser weld the tabs to
Mm-hmm.
larger bus bars that then go to bigger bus bars. So you add quite a lot of weight. And then we actually went back to cylindrical cells after pouch cells,
Mm-hmm.
but we went to like higher end cylindrical cells, and we had multiple modules. Like we had 3 modules of
Mm-hmm.
cylindrical cells. But again,
700.
so no, this was before 21700s actually came on the scene. They were
Mm-hmm.
18650s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this is going back 20, 2020,
Mm-hmm.
I believe we tried to do this. Um, and so, like with the pouch cells, there was a lot of infrastructure required around the cylindrical cells to make
Mm-hmm.
that work. They had to be cased a certain way, manufactured a certain way. And, to get a manufacturer to to do what you need them to do as a very, very low volume customer is very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a very, very big demand at the time for 18650 manufacturing. All those
Mm-hmm.
manufacturers were taken. Um, and we thought, right, we need to look at redesigning the battery pack. And we
Mm-hmm.
just explored the market, looked at all the options. We looked at what cells were even available to us as a low
Mm-hmm.
volume order. And the best result at the time was we use Cal 58 amp hour prismatic cells. We run them 2 in parallel and
Mm-hmm.
then 39 in series. Um, and so yeah, it gave us the like a really good power density and energy density.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even today, supply chain's a living organism. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to
Yeah, yeah.
continuously get quotes. You have to continuously see if you can find better pricing, better suppliers, and it's just constant development. Um, and I think we've had like 5 battery pack proposals in the
Mm-hmm.
last, 4 months, just to see if there's more opportunity on the battery side.
Mm-hmm.
And no supplier has been able to come back to us with even the same power density that
I
we've
see.
had.
Yeah.
They tell us our volume's too small and what have you, and we're telling
Mm-hmm.
them we're already manufacturing to this standard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, we've got, I think, a really, really robust, solid, dense solution.
Mm-hmm.
But it has definitely taken, a couple of generations
I
and
can
iterations to
imagine.
get here.
Yeah, yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine. And then is in the powertrain, what is designed by Savage and what comes from partners? I mean, the motor, inverter, well, as you say, the battery pack.
So the battery pack, we obviously don't manufacture the cells.
Mm-hmm.
We designed the battery pack and the assembly of all the cells, the bus
Mm-hmm.
bars, the welding specifications. So we basically designed the battery pack from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the battery management system is an off-the-shelf solution that
Mm-hmm.
we, worked with the supplier to modify to suit our requirements.
Mm-hmm.
We had some additional safety protocols and requirements that we
Mm-hmm.
needed to add to that battery management system. Um, we use virtually an off-the-shelf charger, an
Mm-hmm.
off-the-shelf DC-DC converter. There's no point in reinventing the wheel there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the inverter, however, we used to have an off-the-shelf solution,
Mm-hmm.
but the it's very difficult to get.
Mm-hmm.
We have a low-ish voltage. We
Mm-hmm.
run sub 144 volts, but we
Mm-hmm.
have a very high power demand, which means you need a lot of current. And to find a supplier who has an
Mm-hmm.
off-the-shelf inverter that can support that is, if possible, really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And that just wasn't cutting it for us. So So we found an inverter supplier who was willing to partner with us, and we
Mm-hmm.
actually developed a larger power board to accommodate the higher current requirements, and we've kind of iterated the control
Mm-hmm.
board component of the inverter for our specific needs. So it's not a ground up design, but
Mm-hmm.
it's heavily modified to our requirements, and we've had a lot of input. And virtually the same story with the motor. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we weren't going to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, with the motor. But we reviewed the internal design, lamination thicknesses,
Mm-hmm.
magnet um, flux densities, and and had to balance between what was already available off the
Mm-hmm.
shelf in terms of stator and rotor molds, and our requirements in terms of volume and power.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we think we've come up with a really good bespoke solution. I mean, the exterior housing of the motor is structural, so we've obviously engineered that. And yeah, so it's kind of like a bit of a hybrid thing. The integration of all these components, the housing of all these components, the structure of the bike, the bodywork, all of the vehicle software, except for a small amount of software on the motor control unit,
Mm-hmm.
the instrument cluster, the seat, it's all really done by us. So um, yeah, like, and there's kind of two main drivers for doing it in house. One is to do with design and freedom
Mm-hmm.
of design. That's been really important to us. But then also, as painful as doing all of this work is, it gives
Mm-hmm.
you a lot of
Yeah,
control
I can imagine.
over the cost, and
In
cost
knowledge as
is
well.
just knowledge. I mean, yeah, there's been a big learning curve. We've
Yeah.
had to learn a lot about a lot, but all of that kind of leads to really firm control over
Mm-hmm.
what the cost should be for a bike, and we're not paying premiums on components
Mm-hmm.
or on assemblies. We're paying like base costs, which is what as a business you should always strive to do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've got a phenomenal product, and we're actually able to be profitable even at low volume.
Cool. And then is something grabbed my attention, the frame and the swing arm, because the battery pack is the central element. Could you tell me how the original trellis evolved to this design?
So the okay, so we had a trellis frame in
Mm-hmm.
2016. It was like the first
Mm-hmm.
concept. It was an MVP. And when you first start, you look at what everyone else is doing and
Mm-hmm.
you go, okay, well, that must be the best solution. And there's definitely arguments for that solution still.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we kind of people kept asking me if it was a Ducati frame. And
It's quite
while I
similar,
was,
actually. Look
it
like
is,
a
I mean,
monster.
yeah, exactly. And as flattered as I was, it's almost a little bit painful because it's a ground up creation. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I welded it myself with a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I designed it and what have you. And twin spar trellis frames are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even through making that frame, I was thinking to myself the whole way, I was like, man, this is not feasible for production. There's
Mm-hmm.
so many connections here. The part
Mm-hmm.
count is so high. Um, and and I didn't want people to think our bike was based on another bike. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted something that was, that looked like a bike but was different enough to be like inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dave Hendroff, our lead designer, joined us start of 2017. And we've grown really, really close. And the design scope was, we want something that people haven't really seen before,
Mm-hmm.
and we also want something that's timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Timelessness is a big design
Yeah.
consideration for us. We think
Mm-hmm.
I just love timeless designs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you look at a Mercedes 300 SL and you just
Yeah,
go,
for
oh
sure.
man, that's such a cool car. And it's like, it's a 1950s car.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we kind of wanted to have that for our products as well. And then, yeah, he came up with a concept and I was like, that's what we're doing. That is so cool. And of course, we've iterated year on year. We've developed it, refined it. But yeah, and I think aesthetically and fundamentally, we needed to go to a backbone
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic. And initially, we did have a nice long backbone with a cradle frame that carried the powertrain, and then that didn't seem feasible, and it would really constrain the volume
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
availability for all the battery pack and the components. And eventually, we moved to an exoskeleton modular frame. And so yeah, morning age. So yeah, that's kind of how that evolved.
I see. In the suspensions, what is developing in house?
Um, well, kind of like our inverter,
Mm-hmm.
we found a manufacturer that manufactured a lot of these.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a lot of input on the internals.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Valves and
things
so
that
on.
really, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
correct. Again, we didn't re-engineer the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
But again, our bike's 280 kilos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we tried to speak to all of the large, name brand
Mm-hmm.
suspension manufacturers, and if they were willing to supply us at all, the cost was like, 2,000 US a
Wow.
bike, or possibly even just for the front forks. Exactly, right. So it completely throws out your business case. We thought, God damn it, we're gonna have to do this ourselves as well. So
Mm-hmm.
then we like found a manufacturer, and the first sample we got was terrible. And then we actually designed our own like axle clamps for the upside down forks. It's got a little Savic on it as
Mm-hmm.
well. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're ours. And then we worked with an Australian superbike rider
Mm-hmm.
and tuned, got a whole bunch of different internals, played around with it. And the end result is a suspension system that is just better than anything we could have gotten off the shelf
Mm-hmm.
and adjusted for it. Like it is fit for purpose for our bike. Um, the bike is the Jed Metcher, the ASBK rider that helped tune it.
Mm-hmm.
He just did an amazing job. Like I thought it handled good before,
Mm-hmm.
but the old prototype handles like a pig compared to the new bike. Like, it came alive. Like it was amazing, and it's so stable and it's nimble, and people think I'm biased towards our product because
Mm-hmm.
I'm the founder, but I'm actually very critical. Like, I
Yeah,
see
yeah. You
everything
have
that's
to.
wrong with
You
it.
have to.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're trained to do as engineers. You look at everything that's wrong with something and try and fix it. It's a
Mm-hmm.
terrible personality trait. Um, and so yeah, but honestly, it handles amazing, and everybody that's ridden it says the same. And I'm just super excited to have more and more people ride the bike because it's just an awesome experience.
Cool. And let's talk about business, Dennis. Well, the bikes are going to be built in Melbourne at Savic facility, correct?
Yeah, so we do the final assembly.
Mm-hmm.
And by final assembly, I mean we assemble the powertrain, we put the swing arms together, all the
Mm-hmm.
frames, the whole vehicle comes together. But we outsource component manufacture. So we don't cast anything
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. We don't machine anything ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We design, we engineer, we
Mm-hmm.
prototype, and then we outsource the component manufacturer, bring all the parts in, and then
Yeah,
assemble it
yeah,
ourselves.
yeah.
Yeah.
And how ready is the facility to produce the bikes?
Well, at the moment, our maximum capacity is 20 units a month, so roughly a bike a day. And that's with a handful of people, and it's quite a tight,
Mm-hmm.
factory. It's just a small pilot factory.
Mm-hmm.
We've developed our assembly process. It's 300 pages. We're refining it,
Mm-hmm.
improving it. But yeah, we're basically at a point now where we're building bikes consistently and
Mm-hmm.
reliably.
I see. And how good has been the pre-order so far? I think that I hear that's more or less 200 pre-orders or something like that.
Yeah, we just over. We I think we're approaching 250
Mm-hmm.
um customers waiting for a bike,
I see.
which
Cool.
which is really exciting. But incredibly frustrating for me personally. Like I want everybody to have a bike tomorrow just so that they can experience it and have one. But you know, it's awesome. It's awesome market validation. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like we've had all of those orders come in online, no test ride.
Mm-hmm.
So they're definitely early adopters.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, enthusiasts of the business and
Mm-hmm.
what we're trying to do. I think the real test will come when we become a bit more mainstream, once we've delivered those first 240.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is definitely a lot more orders out there that are just keeping an eye on us to see if we actually deliver bikes or not, and if we get into production, because it's really hard to do.
And
Um, yeah,
what is the forecast for delivery the first bikes?
we're looking at the first bike should go out in 2 to 3 weeks from now, so
Mm-hmm.
kind of mid-August
Cool.
at the
Yeah.
latest. It's already built.
Mm-hmm.
The next stage for us really is to start serial production. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, trending to that 5, 10, 20 bikes a month.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we hope to kick that off in September, October this year.
Cool. And Dennis, I was wondering, are there any common traits among these customers? You mentioned early adopters, but I mean, age, riding experience, and so on.
Um, it's really diverse. Most of them are men. Like
Mm-hmm.
98% of our customer base are men. Like 98% of our followers are men. It just seems to be a very male-dominated thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a few women in there, which is awesome to see. And we try and be really inclusive, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of what everybody has in common, you know, initially we thought it would be like techie CTOs that
Mm-hmm.
work in the city. But it like couldn't be further from the truth, man. Like our first customer is a primary producer. Our second customer has like a Harley drag record,
Mm-hmm.
and is a lifetime Harley rider.
Nice.
Customer number three is a CTO. Customer number four is like an architect. Customer number five um, is like an engineering manager. And then yeah, there is also, you know, a whole bunch of people that are coming off other brands and wanting our bike or adding our bike to their collection or what have
Mm-hmm.
you. And I think what they all have in common is, you know, like all motorcycle riders, we're all just a little bit crazy, you
Cool.
know. Yeah, I think that's what we've got in common. But they're really passionate about bikes. They love the design, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, in our particular market, design is a big
Yeah,
driver for
yeah, for
purchasing.
sure.
And you know, some people absolutely love our design. Some people really don't like it. It's not for them. But you're going to
Mm-hmm.
get that with any bike. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it's it's really flattering.
And then what is the proportion between alpha and delta?
Ooh, um, I know what the number is. I'm just not sure how confidential it is. I will say there is an overwhelming tendency to lead towards the higher specification.
Mm-hmm. I was about to ask you that. Why two versions?
Um, we actually had three to start with. We had an Omega as well, which we wanted to sell for 13,000
Mm-hmm.
Australian. But we didn't have too many orders,
Mm-hmm.
and the cost wasn't going to be competitive enough. Like we were actually going to lose a lot of money on all the Omega orders, so we had to cancel it. And even the Delta, you know, kind of toes the line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the reality is as you increase volume of production, you decrease cost. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, we try and commonize as many components across as many different market segments and niches as we
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
can. So yeah, we've got a cafe racer style that's quite specific and actually
Mm-hmm.
probably quite a small market segment. But we went with that style initially to kind of differentiate our business and our product to everybody else. What we've got coming next is a little bit more mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
but still, you know, carries that timeless design. But again, it'll be on the same SM1 platform, so we can
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
commonize. all those components and increase our volume with suppliers and then decrease our costs. And, as an early stage business, getting to profitability as quickly as
Yeah, for
possible
sure. That's
means that
critical.
you means
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
actually survive, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just a really important part of our strategy.
I see. And then it's a tough question right now. Why a customer must choose a C series over, for example, Energica SS9?
Um, Look, I never want to speak poorly of another brand. I think everybody in this market deserves credit.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to even get to market, let alone have a successful business like Energica.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know, the way in which we compete with quite a lot of our direct competitors is that
Mm-hmm.
we're a direct customer business.
Mm-hmm.
And what was really important to us was to provide a product that we're really proud of at a
Mm-hmm.
good specification, um, at a particular price.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we benchmarked against like really high end. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. Like basically mass market premium bikes,
Mm-hmm.
and they were sitting at between 25 and 30,000 Australian. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say, um, you know, 20 to 25,000 US.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we thought, okay, well, that's what our price needs to be. Can we actually build a business case
Mm-hmm.
profitably to service that market? And the only way we could do that was through a direct customer model. And so I don't know what the price of the Energica is in Brazil, but in Australia, it's, 40, 50, $55,000.
Mm-hmm.
And we're retailing for 27.30. So, um, it's just, it's cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
It's Australian built, obviously for the Australian market.
Mm-hmm.
But, have said that, the Energica is a phenomenal machine. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great bike. I'm not going to downplay that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely going to suit some riders out there for sure.
I see. And then are there plans to expand the operations to outside of Australia to other markets? Because Savic has a direct to customer sales model, so it will be challenging, right?
It will come with challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I think the distribution network is possibly going to be one of the hardest parts of our business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that after we've basically built an entire motorcycle
Mm-hmm.
virtually from the ground up. So, um, you know, getting our dealership license for one state in Australia was incredibly bureaucratic, incredibly drawn
Mm-hmm.
out. It took a long time. It's so unnecessarily painful. Um, but it is more work, but you actually have to give up a lot of margin with a
Mm-hmm.
traditional dealership model, and you sacrifice that margin to get scale quickly,
Mm-hmm.
which is important. But I don't think there's really a way that you're actually going to get that margin back ever. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like once you sign your soul away, it's just gone.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
coming back.
yeah.
And so, like with our strategy, I'm kind of, um, contrary to what a lot of investors want, and I'm really upfront with this with all of our shareholders, is
Mm-hmm.
my goal is not to scale quickly. It's to scale properly.
Mm-hmm.
I think scaling quickly introduces a lot of risk to the business, especially for a complex hardware product where recall is basically guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
We do everything we can to avoid it, but statistically, it's guaranteed. Um, and so, we thought, well, let's start with Australia. Let's get the
Mm-hmm.
recipe right. Let's
Mm-hmm.
make sure, we've got a good little profitable business ticking over. And then let's look at the next market. And then
Mm-hmm.
let's tackle that market. And let's set up it because it takes, it's quite a big investment to establish a brand in a new market. You have to start all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so,
Do you
you
have
know,
any idea
that,
about any market?
yeah, I think the next market we'll probably look at to the UK.
Mm-hmm.
we see the European market as kind of like a good market for us to break into.
Mm-hmm.
The Our direct competition seems to be doing pretty well in there. The US market isn't really like
Yeah, yeah.
our product and technology doesn't really lend itself well to the US market, and
Mhm.
this type of riders
Why
that
do you
there are
think
over there.
that?
Well, I had a hypothesis, and that hypothesis was confirmed by a number of people that are very well versed in the US market, and
Mm-hmm.
that's that the US market has quite specific needs,
Mm-hmm.
and there tends to be riders in the US market that are hardcore sport bike riders,
Mm-hmm.
or hardcore long distance cruiser type riders.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you look at the US and the density of the US,
Mm-hmm.
especially between all the states, it's just such a vast space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so unless you're commuting around town, our bike doesn't really lend itself to
Mm-hmm.
that. Plus, you know, when you look at the US, it's basically 50 countries connected by
Mm-hmm.
land.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so you actually have to get 50 dealership licenses in every state. Sometimes the rules are a little bit different. It seems really complex. So whereas if we go to the EU, we get EU
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
compliance, and all of a sudden, the bike's complied across this vast market that's a lot closer together, a lot more dense. And I think that the rider demographic suits our
Mm-hmm.
style and brand a bit more. I'm not saying we'll never go to the US. I just
Mm-hmm.
think as a first step, the US would require a bigger investment, for a lower return. That and two of our largest competitors are based in the US, so
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really make sense to go there. We actually looked at South America. We looked at the Asian markets. We
Mm-hmm.
looked at um, a whole the Middle Eastern
Mm-hmm.
markets, and Europe really was just a no-brainer.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, starting in Australia and going back to the UK, you don't have a language barrier.
Yeah.
Cafe races were super popular in the UK, and so there's just it just made a lot of sense for us to dip our toe in the water with international expansion as a small business for the
Mm-hmm.
first time
Mm-hmm.
in the UK. So I want us to be a global business. I want us to be across, 100 countries and have
Mm-hmm.
3 production plants, across the globe, and produce 60, 100,000 units a year. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. And
Mm-hmm.
even if an investor came along and said, here's $1 billion, do it in a year, I'd say thank you, but no thank you. That's a terrible idea. You
Wow.
got to start slow. I think you've got to build that relationship with your customer base, build that
Mm-hmm.
brand loyalty, really look after the customers, make sure they're happy, and the growth will come. We just have to be patient with it.
For sure. And Denise, let's talk about funding. Well, how challenging has it been to raise capital? I mean, how do the investors see the EV industry these days, especially on two wheels? Because, well, a couple of years ago, we had that like spec fever. So now the investors seems to be more down to earth. Could you reflect on that?
Yeah. Oh, look, it's really hard. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we've spoken to a lot of VCs. We've spoken to a lot of PE.
Mm-hmm.
Upper and lower PE market. Um, and we're actually currently doing a crowdsource funding round.
Yeah.
And
That's happening right
it's
now,
going really
right?
well. Correct, correct. So we've
Yeah.
got the expression of interest phase live at the moment. In a
Mm-hmm.
week or two, we'll have our actual offer go live, and that'll be
Mm-hmm.
open for a couple of weeks. And we think that we'll raise around $1.5 million from that, and
Mm-hmm.
that'll help get the business to a point
Mm-hmm.
where we're generating revenue consistently, and these larger funds, we actually
Mm-hmm.
suit the mandate for. The problem we've got is we're kind of in this awkward in between stage where
Mm-hmm.
we're not generating revenue, you know,
Yeah.
to an acceptable level, but we've got a really mature product, so we're not actually a
Mm-hmm.
startup either. We're kind of in that no man's land
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
area, and so yeah. But having said that, you see even VCs struggling to get funding from LPs.
mm-hmm.
I think there's been quite a quite a bullish market, for the last
Yeah.
couple of years after COVID, and now it's definitely going towards a bear market, and people are being a bit more conservative. People have actually approached us and want to invest in us when we are in production because we're actually producing something, and we are a physical product, and it's
Mm-hmm,
not, a hypothesis. It's not a B2B SaaS play, which, there's a lot of, and not to discredit those guys at all.
mm-hmm,
It's we've definitely picked a harder road,
mm-hmm.
but people are starting to look to hardware a little bit more, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
But the funding still is difficult to get. I mean, it's difficult to get in
Yeah.
whatever industry you're in at the moment, for sure.
I see. And there is, well, Savage develops so many proprietary technologies. Are there plans to create, let's say, a new business unit, to sell technologies, consulting, or any other thing to other manufacturers or even to other industries, for example, marine, aviation? That would be
Yeah,
a new source of income.
yeah, it is. I think we have looked at that.
Mm-hmm.
We have been approached by a couple of larger OEMs now to develop powertrains for them.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually got a couple of proposals out at the moment. We're waiting to get confirmation on if we've won the tender or not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not our core business. It's not our core purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, it's a lot more rewarding to sell bikes direct to
Mm-hmm.
customers, and you see that smile on their face. Like, we actually had our first customer who's been waiting like 7 years to get a bike. He supported us amazingly. We've become really close.
Mm-hmm.
And he test rode one for the first time last week, and there was just tears. Like, he was
Wow,
crying, I was
amazing.
crying.
Yeah.
He was so impressed by what we've actually built, and it's been such a long time coming. um, you're not going to get that from selling services,
For
you
sure.
know. Um, Selling services may keep the lights on in time, but I would ideally like to build a core business that sells product direct to customers, and you get, that incredible satisfaction and feedback from the retail market. So
Hmm.
it's just, yeah, it's so rewarding.
I see. And Dennis, well, let's talk about the CEO role. I think there were things that you didn't know that you didn't know. So, could you share this kind of lesson for with us?
Oh man. Um, um, I think I've been incredibly lucky with the team that we have.
Uh huh.
They're they're really passionate, really competent. They work their asses off. Um, so we don't really have any people problems, which people
Mm-hmm.
normally say is the hardest and the
Mm-hmm.
most frequent. And we do have a pretty small team, and I'm very protective of the company culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's what's going to drive our success long term. And so we actually, like, before we bring anyone on, we like talk and even work with them for like 1 to 2 months
Mm-hmm.
before we even really consider them. We've got a really long hiring process, and that works really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I think things that I didn't know that kind of took me by surprise. I didn't think I'd be capital raising as much as I am,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Like, my entire role is basically sales to investors.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no one else that can really do it apart from a founder. And so, growing up as an engineer, someone quite technical, that was definitely, I thought I'd have to do it 3 months of the year, and then the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the time I could just focus on the product. But no, it's like full time, 12 months of the year. You've got to keep on that hustle. You got to keep networking, keep growing. And I'd say one of the best lessons I've learned was like your network as a CEO is your biggest asset, and it takes consistent development, relationship management, and so yeah, if there's anyone aspiring to start a business or whatever, just it's not what you know, it's who you know a lot of the time. So yeah, that's probably all I've really got to say about that.
And Dennis, before I let you go, where do you see Savic in 5 years? What's your view and what are your goals?
Um, where I would like us to be in 5 years' time, so that's 2029, is producing 3 to 5 thousand units a year. Um, and with the product portfolio we have planned, we can probably do that across Australia, UK, and one other European market. Um, yeah, I'd like to see us, starting to get quite established in Europe and the UK. Definitely established here. 2 other products in the portfolio, and yeah, just a good little production system, working with an awesome group of people, and just people that are passionate about what we're doing.
Dennis, thanks a lot. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your reflections. And well, now I have another reason to come back to Australia to put my leg over a Savage.
As long as you're talking about the bike, you're more than welcome.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.